Well, hello, everyone. I'm not going to say welcome back because this is my new podcast, Growing Money with Sean Trace. It sounds like we're watering plants, but that was kind of the analogy I picked. I like the idea of growing things. And I've got a really cool guest with me. Can you introduce people? I'm just waking up. It's early here. Can you introduce yourself to people and tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, again, I'm back on the new podcast. My name's Tim Craven, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm like a audio engineer, record producer, and as we discussed on another podcast, my other side hustle, if you will, is I'm a real estate agent in town. So that's kind of what I
That's
do.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
make
Yeah,
records, make
we had
records,
such a
and
fun
sell
time.
homes.
You can't go wrong with that combination, right? I mean,
I mean,
I
it's
like that,
working.
right?
Yeah.
Right. I think that that's kind of like one of the things. I was just looking at LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a really weird place. I I like it. I enjoy it. I go there to see interesting, business content.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's an interesting place because everyone tries to put on this front that all is well in my world. But lately, people are looking for work. There's a lot of people that are, reaching out and putting out, feelers and saying, "Hey, I all is not well." And one of the things that I think is really interesting right now is that there's a lot of people that I've noticed that are kind of branching out into their own. Like for a long time, they did the traditional thing. They tried to, I'm not going to say play by the rules, but put one foot in front of the other the way they were supposed to. And it didn't work. And now they're looking at, what can they do to create their own path. And one of the things that I love about, what a lot of the professionals I know, and I think both of us, we don't have one thing that is the thing we do. We've got things that we do. And for a long time, I think people would like be like, that side hustle is, kind of keep it under wraps. At least I did. I was like, that's not my main thing. This is my main thing. But now I'm like, well, they're all things that allow me to better myself financially. And I think more people are kind of embracing that. Like, there's this portfolio for investments. Well, people have a portfolio for earnings.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a big thing that myself and a lot of people that I associate with and work with, they do the same thing. I mean, even I mean, I don't know really any musician friends of mine that don't haven't figured out a way to do what they do, but also monetize what they do in like other ways that are creative. So, for instance, I have several friends who are session musicians, but they also do things where they do a lot of online stuff where they do like master class things where they can, through a company, they'll teach a master class like this is my method. This is how I write a song, or this is how I
Yeah.
approach certain aspects of whatever. And then also a lot of players, they'll hook up with like different manufacturers and become like, they'll do like demos of their gear and kind of build like a YouTube presence as well. And I think it's really smart. I don't think it, I don't think you ever have to, especially these days. I don't feel like it makes sense if you have the time and you have the resources to
Yeah.
do more, why not? I mean, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Is really kind of the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
There was and it's really interesting because I've been really fascinated of late by Fiverr, of watching. I found I had written a song for my wife, and the lyrics weren't sitting perfectly with me, and there was something wrong with it, and I was like, man, I would love to find a place that I can find someone who can kind of polish these lyrics with me. And I
Hmm.
went to Fiverr, and there were thousands of people that offered this service. And there was one guy that was really interesting for $100. He would, kind of guide you through a songwriting process, whether you have lyrics and he can write the music, you have music, he can write the lyrics, you have lyrics that need polishing. And one of the things that I noticed is most of his services were about $100, and he had over 1,000 positive reviews. And I was like, that's a lot of money, like right
Yeah.
there. Even if this is a side hustle, but he's done it well enough now that it's become something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I do Fiverr. I do it all the time. I love it. It's great. Like, I set up a profile on Fiverr maybe a year ago, and maybe it's been over a year now. And I offer mixing services to musicians that need their songs mixed. And there's a ton of people out there that do it. So it's crowded, but every now and then
Yeah.
one will pop through, and they might have 5 or 6 songs that they need mixed. And what's great about Fiverr is they allow you to do like tiered packages. So if it's, a
Yep.
certain size project, it's a certain amount of money, blah, blah, blah. And it's been great. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
great, it's just been like this little thing that's just kind of in the background happening. Again, like a lot of the stuff that I do to generate income, is a lot of it is just happening in the background. It's active in the sense that you have to do something to earn it, but it's passive in the sense that it's like, it's just like, you just get a text on your phone and they're like, hey, I need you to mix. I've got a 5-song EP that I'm doing. I need you to mix it. Would you be into it? It's like, yeah, sure. Send your files over and we'll get it done. So it's been great. I mean,
There
I
was,
can't say
yeah,
enough good stuff about it.
there was something you just poked at right there, and I wanna dive into that because that is kind of what I have this whole channel about. I've been noticing, like, with the advent of Chat GPT and the kind of the rise of TikTok, we've become inundated with financial experts, with this expert, that expert, and I was looking at, like, with this channel, how do I want to build it? And for me, I'm like, I really want this financial channel to be about interviewing people. Why? Because I want to hear. It doesn't need to be someone who's crushing it. It could be just someone who's got a degree of wisdom about how they're trying to start their business, or what they do themselves. But there was this idea of stuff starts going out there and growing. I was reading Ramit Sethi's book, I Can Teach You How to Be Rich, I think is the name of it. And there was an interesting thing, and it was just like, one of the ways that you want to get rich is you put your money out there into these different projects, and they just start working. And that was where I got the analogy of growing money, because it really is like planting seeds. You're planting a garden. I have this long-term vision for one of the things I'm working on. Uh, for I taught English for a long time. That was my side hustle, was teaching
Hmm.
English, and I'm an exceptionally good teacher. But I'm constantly running into this realization that I get paid X amount of dollars for a class, and I have a limited amount of time. And I've been trying to wrap my mind around, well, the demand is there for learning a language. And it's a large demand if I can scale it outside of the location that I'm in, the physical location that I'm in.
Hmm.
Um, but you have to have a way to kind of reach that group. And so, there's a couple ways that I've been looking at this. One is building, I have my YouTube channel with my daughter, Ilani's Little World, that is all about teaching English to kids and helping kids learning with English and science and STEM. And we're doing all these fun videos. And I'm really putting energy into that because I think that there's, a limited amount of good kids content out there. Like, my daughter gets a hold of YouTube, it just goes south really quick. I mean, it
Yeah.
goes in a weird direction very fast.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, whoa,
Yeah.
what are you watching? 2 clicks away from chaos. And so
Hmm.
I'm kind of trying to do my part to that. But growing this project, and I'm kind of inspired by this guy named Andrew. I can't remember his last name, but he's got this website called Stage Milk. It's for actors. And it essentially is a monthly subscription service that you sign up and you get this self tape every month. And so I'm already looking to the future about how I'm building this other language channel, that these are seeds that I'm planting. And these are things that I'm growing, that I have this vision that what I can grow it into. And those, like, you go to the store, I remember as a kid, we'd go and buy the seeds and we'd plant them, and you see this big, beautiful stalk of corn, you put it in the ground, and it's like, and you're like, wow, that's nothing right now. And a lot of people give up. They stop watering the plant, they don't think about it, and their garden goes to waste. But then it doesn't take much water
Mm-mm.
to grow something. And then, you come back in 6 months and you have these things that you can harvest. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man.
There's that's I love. There's a ton of apps like for financial investing and that kind of thing for people who are novice at investing, which is I can include myself in that. I don't, I'm not like an expert in any way, but I know what I know and it works for me. But I always people who are younger, like I've got some cousins, some nephews. My cousins are definitely not younger. I have some nephews who are in college, just getting ready to graduate, and they're always like, asking me, they want to invest their money and they want to get into things. So when you to kind of continue with the growing and planting seeds, there's all these great apps out there. One in particular is called Acorn, and it's
Yeah.
called Acorn with the idea that you're going to grow this mighty oak financially. And I've done it for both of my sons. I've started investing like weekly amount of money into these Acorn accounts for them so that when they turn, what I think in the state of Tennessee is like 25, they have this money that they can go out and start their lives with, which I think is a smart way to go. And it's really going to be beneficial to them, whether they want to use it for college or start a business or whatever they choose to do, buy a house, buy a car, whatever. It's theirs to do whatever they want with. Um, and it's great because it happens kind of, you set it up to withdraw a certain amount of money each week from your account that you attach to it. And then you can also attach any of your like debit cards to it and it'll do the roundups, so it'll round up all of your purchases. So for instance, if you buy something that's like $5.90, it'll round it up to $6 and it'll kick 10 cents into there or whatever you set it up for. So you can do roundups, whatever it is, it rounds it up. You can round it up to the nearest dollar. You can round it up to whatever, or you can do like 10 times. So it rounds it up to the nearest dollar and then adds 10 times to it, So it's these like small little
Oh,
trickles
wow.
of money that are just happening kind of in the background. And you see it, if you check your bank account, you will definitely see it and you will definitely feel it if you're aggressive with it. But if you can afford it, you should do it. And it just happens automatically. That way you don't have to think about it. And that's like getting back to what you were
Yeah.
saying, I think people have a tendency like I did to take your eye off the ball sometimes and be like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing that. Um, I find it like when I'm, the same way with like taxes, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta pay my quarterly taxes. It's like you kind of
Yeah.
forget about it and then it creeps up on you and all of a sudden it's like, damn. So I think those are great ways for people to, start investing and it's all managed by the app and the people who do it and you can just kind of set like moderate to aggressive to conservative investment strategies and based on which one you select it takes your money and invests it into like different types of ETFs and spreads it kind of around in a kind of conservative, moderate, or aggressive way, depending on what you do. And it's great. I mean, it's been awesome. It's been really cool, and it's
Yeah.
fun to like every couple months like pull up the app and check it and be like, okay, all right, it's happening. You know.
Yeah. It, I love that. And I love the fact that what you brought up right there is something that's a big motivator for me is my wife and I, we have our ability to make money, but neither of us is super financially literate. Like, in all honesty, we have a lot of room that we can grow. And I'm
Hmm.
not hating on her or myself, but like, when I went to school, the education was not there for financial literacy, like at all. My school, we've got a ton of religious training. We got, life skills. Our life skills class was like a carpentry class, which was cool. I love that I got to do carpentry. I've never made anything else out of wood in my life since that point in time. My mom still has the small cabinet I made. It's pretty cool. But if I had have had a 6 month class that in that same amount of time that they taught me some basic financial principles, I probably would be a little bit further ahead financially. And, God bless algebra. It is an interesting topic, but I hardly ever use algebra in my day to day life. And I don't know if that's saying anything about the American school system that we're not using algebra, or just if it's not a skill that is as applicable in everyday life. But we are not teaching financial literacy. And one of the things that is a journey of mine is that this whole channel, this whole process, is that I want to have something to leave for my daughter. I want to create something for her, or say I can get her channel going, this learning channel that is all around her brand. You hear about some of these people that their parents have invested for them. They have set aside this money for them. So they get to that point of, I was pointing out to my wife, the Harry Potter actors, like some of these kids, they never have to work again in their life. They have the financial freedom to do whatever they want, and I love the fact that like Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson are so picky with their roles. Like they hardly act anymore, except for, and I Daniel Radcliffe, the weirdest movies, but they're so good.
Hmm.
These roles are so good because someone set him and her up with very smart financial plans to invest what they were making, and now that money is working for them. And if you can, and you don't have to be Emma Watson or Daniel Radcliffe. You can be starting from where you're at right now as a parent and putting aside something that could turn into, by the time your child's 65, could turn into $300,000 or $1 million or more with modest investments right now.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the path that I was on when, both of my sons were born. Immediately I was like, we're going to get them social security numbers and we're going to start investment accounts for them, because what better way to do it than day one? I mean, I wish that I had that, or I had the wherewithal to, and they're not. I mean, you're not, as a kid, you're not. I mean, I could barely
Yeah.
save enough. I mean, it was like, I used to say, my mom tells this story that like, we would work all summer, like mowing lawns and doing whatever it is that we did to like make money as we were kids, and we would save it up and save it up, and we'd go on vacation. And we always went on a summer vacation. We would drive around the country because my parents were teachers and they had June, July, and August off. So we would save up and save
Yeah.
up, and then we would leave and we would head out wherever we were heading out to. And my brother and I and my sister would have this money that we saved up that we could get souvenirs along the way. Like if we go to Statue of Liberty or Mount Rushmore or whatever, we could get like a little. And my mom's always like, it was hilarious because she's like, we would stop at the first truck stop and you would have practically all of your money spent in like the gift store at the first truck stop in the middle of Kansas. So I had no, as a kid, you don't know. So I think it's why it's important that your parents like, do it for you. And then when you get to the age where you can start to understand it, you can be like, look, this is what I've done. This is what is going to become yours. And this is how you should move forward with it. So, I think it's a good thing. And I think you're right. I think it's not something that's taught in school. Like I had one, I mean, and of course I didn't, as I got into college and stuff, I wasn't focused on economics. But in high school, when they're trying to expose you to different things that might grab your
Yeah.
interest and get you to move into a direction, um, and we had one economics class my freshman year, and it was just like called just like economics, and it's like the most basic like supply and demand kind of thing, and it was just like this teacher. I mean, I'm not trying to bust on anybody, but he was definitely at the end of his teaching career. So it was like very much like every day you would come in and you'd like, it was just like, okay, read the chapter and answer the questions at the end of the at the end of the section.
Yeah.
So you'd spend the class, instead of him teaching, you would basically spend the class reading or goofing off, which is what I did. But you were supposed to like read the chapter and then answer the 10 questions at the end of the chapter and then turn them in. And that was it. That's what we did. And it was like not engaging. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't anything that engaged me as a student. And so I just kind of like checked out early on that one and never really,
Right.
there's so much that you could do with that class that would like be so engaging
Right.
and so helpful for the students to understand how things work. but not to sound too much like George Carlin or like a cynic, but I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think there's actually in the United States, I think there's like a real sentiment that that's maybe not something people necessarily want everyone to have, because you
Yeah.
know as you get older you start to realize the patterns that happen, um, as far as like political and economic in this country, so at least in the United States. And there are a lot of people who benefit from people who just know how to make money to spend it, and they never quite know how
Yeah.
to get to the next, like the next hurdle. So they're just constantly in this perpetual state of like, I make money, I go to work, I make money, I spend it, I make money, I spend too much, I run up credit card debt, I spend money, I don't have enough to do what I want to do. And then, of course, on the other end, employers are keeping wages as low as possible. So what I learned early on is
Yeah.
that you go to a job and they pay you just enough to stay broke, basically. But yet you want to
Yeah.
do all of these things. You want to experience life, and you want to have a family, and you want to buy a car, and you want to have a house, and you want to go to Disneyland or Disney World or whatever it is, and you can't afford it. So you borrow the money,
Yeah.
and then you have to pay it back, and that keeps you at your job and doesn't give you the freedom to like branch out and try other things. And like, again, that sounds very cynical, but I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
It's like I used to listen to George Carlin all the time as a kid growing up, and it was always that was like one of his rants was is like, there is this concerted effort to have a large group of the population be in that kind of cycle where
Yeah.
they don't really know how to get out, or they get too far in and they can't get out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, it's funny, like as soon as you enter college, as soon as you, at least this was my experience and a lot of friends, like, you know there are people who go to banks with like in-depth business plans and 5 and 6 year like projections, but they'll a credit card company, a bank will lend an 18-year-old who has no assets, no wealth or nothing. They'll give them immediately. Like on my first day of college, I was at the bookstore and there was like it was like Discover, MasterCard, Visa, American Express.
Yep.
They had like tables set up and they're like, apply for a credit card. And they're like, that's crazy irresponsible to do that. And of course I did. I was like, hell yeah. And it's like
Yep.
immediately without any money. I had no job. I had no real assets. I had very little money in a bank account. And immediately they're like, oh yeah, you're pre-approved for like $2,000. Until like an 18-year-old, you're like, what?
Yep.
That's awesome. I'm going to go buy a guitar
Two
with that.
grand. Yep.
It's like, yeah.
It's gone.
And then it
I was
and
the
then
same.
and
I
then
got
just and then
I
it
got the same.
starts the whole thing starts there, and it's like, okay, now I got to pay back this 2 grand. How am I going to do that with no job, going to school full time, and no real way to pay this back?
Hmm.
And that's exactly kind of the predatory approach that some of that is. And luckily I have very conservative parents that helped me shy away from all of that. But I know people who've done that time and time again, and it's kind of scary, really, in a way. And they don't,
Yeah.
they don't realize that it's like an okey doke. They catch you in it every time.
There was I was watching one of the things too when we were developing my daughter's YouTube channel in the early stages. We were seeing all these kids that had these toy channels, toys, 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 toys. And my wife and I were like, well, should we do one of those videos? Maybe that will be something that people enjoy. We were just like, we don't know. We were just trying to expand out and get more. For us, it was about trying to do that and get some ways that we could advertise, and eventually have content that people could see and say, hey, this is something we could do. But we were really, as we watched more of that content, and we were just like, wow, these kids channels are just massive consumerism, and it's like, you need the newest this toy, and it's like literally training them from an early age to just consume,
Hmm.
consume, consume. It was that 80s movie where the aliens have the thing and like
Yeah,
there's this consume
yeah,
word,
yeah.
and they put the glasses on.
They're
Can't even
alive or
remember what that
something.
movie was.
I think it was called They're
Yeah, it
Alive.
was awesome.
Yeah,
It was
I'll
a
look it up.
great movie.
Yeah.
but there was this idea of we're just trained to consume from this early age, you know, and I don't have any problem with kids learning about toys or things like that, but it really is from this early age. So much training is put into creating consumers to steadily grow the economy, and yet very few people are taught these skills. And one of the things, what was it? They're alive.
It's their, yeah, they live is what it is. John Carpenter film.
They live.
Yeah, They Live. I remember watching that
Great
movie.
movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Great movie. And so, one of the things that I like right now, and part of the reason I'm creating this podcast, like I don't have the answers, but I'm learning and I'm talking to these really interesting people that all have a piece of information that can help other people grow. Maybe they don't have all of it, but that's the cool thing. I for the longest time had a hard time getting through the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Hmm.
and I'm not a good reader, and it's hard for me to read a book. I just get so ADD. I'm just like boo boo.
Right, right.
But I'm really good with books on tape. So I got it on Audible and I listened to the whole thing, and I was just like blown away. I was like, concepts that I wish I had. The idea of even just the basic idea of an asset versus a liability. I have some family members that I love them to death, but they're like, whoa, I just bought this thing. And I was like, what does it do? I don't know,
Hmm.
but it's pretty cool. And then there's like 2 weeks of enjoyment that come from this thing. And then that money's gone. And I mean, I'm not hating on enjoyment. If you have a good business plan and you have a good strategy, there is something to be said that you need to have fun in life, right? But if all of your money is going into this enjoyment category and you're not growing anything to protect you on a rainy day, or I love Dave Ramsey's, like, what was it, 6 steps or 7 steps, and one of his basic ones is just, in the most basic form, to have an emergency fund, have $1,000
Hmm.
set aside in case
Yeah.
something happens, and then you build it up to 8,000 or 10,000 just for the inevitable.
Hmm.
These principles are there, and what I love is now we have all of these ways to learn it. And yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I did right away. Like, I got some advice early on from my grandfather, and getting into real estate. I recently just got my license. I've only been in it. This is my third year, but I've always owned a house, and you know, bought it, sold it for a profit, and then took that money and rolled it into another one. Um, and so, he gave me three pieces of advice when I was a kid, and one of them was, when you can buy, don't rent. But didn't give me any real
Yeah.
explanation as to why that is. But I was just able to I kind of just took it for what it was, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, renting is, you paying to use something, and you don't actually own it. And it wasn't until later. I mean, he kind of told me that, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And then later, as I got older, I started to realize what he meant, and immediately, I rented while I was in college, rented an apartment, and then when I first got out of college and started working, I rented an apartment for a very short time until I could kind of know the area that I'd moved to. And then immediately, as soon as I could, I was like, I'm going to buy something, even the smallest. It was small. It was such a small little place, and it didn't cost hardly any money, especially at the time. Um, and it's been it's been a lifesaver and a game changer for me since day one. It's allowed me to do so
That's
many other
awesome.
things. And if I hadn't, and that little piece of advice was always in my head while I was renting. I was like, I gotta stop renting. I gotta stop renting, because rents were, going up and up, and in the Philadelphia area, things were expensive. And um, there was like a program that the city was running, where for first time home buyers, where they would, like, you you did this essentially. You borrowed the money from the developer, and then after 5 years, you had to refinance the loan. It was like a balloon mortgage, what they call a balloon mortgage. You borrow the money from the investor, and I mean, sorry, from the developer of these condominiums, and then after 5 years, you have to refinance into a traditional mortgage, right, or sell it. And the city boomed, and I sold it. I was like, I made a really good profit on it, and then was able to use that profit to buy a house an actual house from a condominium to a house, and then just steadily start to grow it. And a lot of my clients that I work with in real estate, that's one thing that I try to talk to them about, is getting from, and a lot of my clients are clients that are like this, and I really enjoy working with them because it's fun to like show them like what they're doing, and it's like, how much are you spending in
Yeah.
rent? Like, go talk to my financial guy, get pre-approved. And so if you're spending X amount of dollars a month in rent, like what does that translate into what you can afford to buy? And they're usually like really shocked. They're
Yeah.
like, well, I had no idea I could actually afford to buy this much. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, let's go look for something. And it doesn't have to be a house. It doesn't have to be your dream house. It can be a condominium, but think about it. Like, your first home should be like a 3 to 5 year plan for you to build equity and wealth, And so it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, all the things that you want. It just has to be, you just have to start building equity. You just have to start owning it. And so that's what I try to impress upon them, because a lot of them are like, oh, I can only afford X amount, and that's pretty low for Davidson County. I was like, there's something out there. Trust me, we're gonna find it. We're gonna search high and low, and we're gonna find you exactly what you're looking for in a price range that you're comfortable, and you're gonna be in it for 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, you can sell it and make a profit, or better yet,
Yep.
you could keep it and rent it, and then pull equity out of it to buy your next house. And so now your house is paying for the down payment on your next house, and your renter that you're putting in your property is paying for your mortgage and your HELOC that you took out to buy your other house. And then your income is paying for your new mortgage, or maybe the renter is helping pay that mortgage. Maybe there's enough money in it that the renter's paying the mortgage and they're making money, but if you're
Yeah.
cash positive, even $100 a month, that you're killing it, right? So it's positive.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. So I try to explain that, and they're like, "Oh, wow!" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is how you do it, and this is a great first step." So
Yep.
it's fun.
And that's
It's
the
really
thing. It's a first
rewarding to
step.
do that.
It
Yeah.
and like it might not be flashy in the beginning. A
Mm-mm.
lot of people want their financial, like, hey, I love the information that goes around on social media, but I also hate it because it's so much of it is a facade. It's the whole
Mm-hmm.
Instagram or TikTok, and not hating on the platforms, but I'm challenged by the way that sometimes people fake it and like look at how happy I am and how beautiful my house is. One of the things that I see are all of these financial experts, not financial experts, but these people that are talking to people about how I'm going to teach you how you can go on ChatGPT and make $50,000 a month. And like you want to ask, hang on, are you doing that yourself? Well, no, I'm teaching people how to do it. I'm like, well, there's your hustle. Like that's actually your hustle.
Right,
Like
right, right,
that's what you're doing. And
right.
like and I'm not judging you for it. That's great. But like, we have these different people that show something or another. And maybe they do have this information. But honestly, I actually think that they're showing people how to do this, and it might help them, and it might be, skills there. I'm already seeing people
Mm-hmm.
advertising for ChatGPT expert jobs. So certainly new areas are opening up. But we see people who've got flashy, like I'm so and so, and this is my 25th investment portfolio. That person started somewhere. I like following the rise of Mr. Beast. He's an interesting kid. He's still a kid, but he was a kid who started out making YouTube videos, and he even in his interview says that for years he was just getting nowhere. He would put a video
Mm-hmm.
up, nothing happened. Put a video up, nothing happened. Living out of his mom's house type of a thing. And then suddenly his videos, and I think 2016 or 17, started getting some traction. Just wasn't anything big. And then boom, guy blew up. He just got big, and it was pretty dramatically so. But he also had the wherewithal and the intelligence to him. I don't know if there was some family there telling him this or whatever. He started investing immediately, and getting into these other companies. And I think that what I was reading is he did a bunch of real estate investment. They have all these houses where he set up in North Carolina. They're out in Greenville, North Carolina. That is where his base is at. And he's got a ton of people out there that are moving into the area to kind of be part of their team.
Hmm.
And, and they'll set people up in these houses. I'm like, dude's investing in real estate. So he's
Yeah.
got all these houses for his company. And, then he invested in Feastables and just making sound business decisions. And like he's worth over $1 billion something now. And
Hmm.
it's all because that money he put into really smart investments really fast.
Hmm. It's
Way to
a,
go.
yeah, and like getting back to the idea that there's, as when we were growing up, there was very little education about, we didn't have the
Yeah.
internet, so all we had was what was in our immediate family and circle of friends. And if you didn't have somebody who was inclined to talk about money and financial uh, knowledge, and having like the term that you used was just, having the facility to learn making good financial decisions, or strategies, really financial strategies moving forward. You kind of didn't get it. But now, like you said, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm inundated with people with these like hustles, and it's like, for no money you can do this, and it's like, I don't know if they work or not, but it's, if I had the interest in pursuing one of those things, it's definitely available. And I think that's the key, is that
Yeah.
there's lots of opportunities out there to find ways to grow money, invest money, and make money. Whether they're all legit or not, I don't know. I mean, I was always raised that
Right.
if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. But who knows? But
Yeah.
the idea is that you need to start somewhere. You need to do something. and
Yeah.
and it's like, I talk to a lot of younger people about that all the time. I'm like, do something. Like, you don't have to pick the right way to do it at first, but just do something, and do something safe. So I try to turn them onto those apps. Like, and even then, I'm like, I'm worried, like, you know, how it is sometimes with companies in the United States. You'll invest your money in it, and then all of a sudden it just disappears. I'm worried that, like, in 25
Yeah.
years, I'm going to go, like, to cash out my Acorn app, and just, as it's not really like my main investment. I just kind of do it for the fun of it, to see, and I'm obviously doing it for my sons. I would hate for them to be, at 25, be like, oh, cool, I'm going to go cash this out. And all of a sudden it's like they file bankruptcy, and then all their assets are tied up, and then they can't get their money. But it is insured up to a certain amount. So I feel good about that. But, I guess at any point something could happen. But the idea is to do something and be thinking about it. Like, the fact that,
Yeah.
like, my nephews are, their heads in that space, and of course they're influenced by their group of people. So they're like really into sports, and they're really into basketball. So they see all these basketball players who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to get my salary paid to me this year in Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, not a good idea. Don't do that. It's like, and they're like, yeah, so and so from the Lakers, or so and so from the Cavs is, they're getting paid in Bitcoin in their salary. And I was like, yeah, well, I'd read the fine print on that, because anyone, if they have a financial
Yeah.
advisor or an attorney, they would have advised them not to do that. So maybe they're
Yeah.
getting a portion of it, or there's something going on. But, so they were all hyped on, like, well, we want to invest in Bitcoin and whatever. And I'm like, look, do this. Your first $10,000, invest it in 3 ETFs. It's the Invesco QQQs, which follows the Nasdaq, Spiders SPY, which follows the S&P, and DIA, which is, they call diamonds, which follows the Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's what you should be buying. Don't try to pick a stock. Don't try to find some company that's like hot for a second and then drops off the face of the earth. Like, just nice, slow and steady. Put it where it's safe. It's like Warren Buffett says that the stock market takes the stairs going up and takes the elevator going down. So that's the thing that you have
Yeah.
to keep in mind. It's steady and it's incremental. And,
Yeah.
there are winners and losers every day in the stock market. So what you want to do is try to minimize your risk. And if you can't sit on top of it every day, and you're not going to be an expert in it, and you're not going to watch those things every day, the best thing to do is to stick it somewhere where it's low risk, and it's going to grow. And that's
Yep.
the best advice. Like, those ETFs are great. There's all sorts of like different sectors that you can get into, sector ETFs if you want to get something more specific than just the broad markets. But if you're going to do a company, research the company. Don't just follow somebody else that says, you should stick it in whatever. It's like, don't,
Yeah.
like, be smart about it. Big companies,
Right.
big companies have been around for a long time. Those are the ones you want,
Yeah.
and just start young and
Well,
just don't think about it and just keep doing it. And then when you're 50 years old, look back and be like, wow, that was really smart. I'm glad I did that.
it's like laying your foundation, and I think that there's the size of that, like the and it comes back to a basic concept of this: what are you investing in? Are you even investing? And one of the most important things is to invest in yourself, however that might be. Start the foundation. It might be that people go, oh, I don't have enough to invest. Well, then maybe invest in yourself and look at finding a way to make more money. Finding a shift in your career, finding a new angle, or looking at what you're good at. And maximizing that. One of my assistant was talking to me, and she's like, well, down the road we could get products that we could sell on your daughter's page, and she's like, we could have toys, and I said, or we could create worksheets that students can learn with, and digital worksheets that parents would like to have to be able to print up that go with our lessons that we could be throwing up on Etsy right now. That is, a digital product that someone could be printing that's actually useful, is extremely inexpensive, so that they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to think twice about paying $2 for this printable. And yet it's a phenomenal idea. And it's like, it's not flashy. It's not flashy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, I would like the little puppet that looks like your kid. I was like, that's kind of creepy.
Right.
But I do
Yeah.
do get that might be something that down the road is a fun thing to do. But the idea is looking at just taking the steps, taking the steps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a question for you. What are the resources that you go to find out more information about finances, about money, about uh, what are your information sources that you really enjoy?
I'm on the internet. I mean, I'm on different websites. So I read the financial news every morning in my quiet time before everybody gets up. That's the first thing I do is I read all the financial news. So I read it on online on Forbes. I read a couple other like Motley Fool. I'm a member of. I pay for a membership
Mm.
there. They give you like insight on different things. A lot of times that's a little. I'm questioning whether I should continue doing that because it's a little bit of a rabbit hole where they just chase you down this rabbit hole and then they never really give you any information. But my online trading account is really useful. TD Ameritrade is really good. And then I read, different news sources, CNN Financial, Wall Street Journal, MSNBC. I usually watch that pretty much during the day. And it's amazing how even if you're just casually paying attention to it, which is what I do. I'm not an investor and I'm not a financial genius or wizard. And, I'm very content with where I'm at financially, mainly because I don't go to work. I don't go to work. I mean, I work, but I don't go to work. So I'm winning. As far as I'm concerned,
Yeah,
that's like a win, right? So, um,
right.
but it's like I casually listen to this stuff and occasionally something will catch my ear and I'll pay attention to it. And the information that is just coming at you, it can be overwhelming if you try to catch all of it. But if you catch a couple things here and there, it's enough to like, oh, I'm going to check that out. So then maybe they've got the CEO of this cool company. Like I'm into like a lot of tech stocks. I'm probably overexposed in the tech sector. So I've been trying the last couple of years to like reevaluate my portfolio, but I'm a big fan of like quantum computing right now and AI, and
Right.
which I think is really cool. And of course, everybody is, but I feel like I was in it like 2 years ago. I was really thinking about it, and now everybody's with the chat GPT, everybody's talking about AI, and it's like a big thing. I was thinking about it like years ago, and a lot of these companies were coming out, and anytime somebody had something to say or there was a CEO from one of these companies, I would pay attention, and then the stuff that I'm not interested in just would I would just let it go by. And then when something would catch my ear, I'd pay attention to it. And then you go on the internet and you look it up and you try to go to reliable sources because there's a lot of sources out there that maybe aren't so reliable. And I try to just stick with some of the more reliable mainstream stuff that works, um, and just gather as much information about it as I can. And, you know, and then sometimes you roll the dice on it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But, I don't, there early on when I started, buying stocks and investing in the stock market, which is only one aspect of investing. There's so many different things that
Yeah.
you can do to invest
Yeah.
money. The stock market is one of them. I had a guy who this was back before the internet, and I would go meet with him. Like we'd meet like every 2 weeks, and we'd talk about what he's doing and what I'm doing and what he thinks I should be doing. And he always talked about allocating different percentages of your money to different types of risk. So there's like, the biggest part is going to be moderate to low risk. And then you always leave a little bit of money to play with, is what he'd call, like move things around, try some things, check out a company that may be ready to pop and you can make some quick money and then roll that money. So anytime you did that, anytime we would find like a stock or we'd find something that was going to, pop, and it did, then you take out your initial investment that you put in and you put that back in your play money, and any profit goes into your steady money. And so you just keep doing that, right? So it's like, for
Yeah.
instance, let's say you put $2,500 into a stock and it makes $2,500. You take $2,500 out and you put that in your safe money, and then you take your $2,500 and you let it roll onto the next
Hmm.
play. So that's kind of how I do it. So I always have a couple companies that I'm looking at that may or may not be doing well. Some of them do, some of them don't. And when they do, there's all sorts of strategies too within that. Like I talked to friends of mine who are getting into this that are my age actually, and I talked to them about their stop losses, where you can, you know, automatically set a stop loss so that you don't lose all of your money. It'll just automatically, like, you'll set it up, and then the trading platform will just, if it drops and it hits a certain threshold, it'll automatically just get you out, like if it happens
Yeah.
and you're not watching it, like let's say you're at work or whatever. So those are good safety mechanisms. And then, you can also do it on the high end too. It's like, oh, when this thing makes 30%, I want to sell off my profit and let my initial investment roll. So those are all different ways you can do it without having to like be on it all day and like day trading, and making sure that you're timing it properly. So you can kind of set your tops and your bottoms that way, which is a really smart way to go, because then you're limiting your risk, and then you're also like being content, because it's like the Kenny Rogers song. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? So like when a
Yeah.
stock is up and it's hot, everybody wants to see how high it's going to go, but at some point you got to be like, you know what, I'm doing pretty well here. I'm going to peel off some of my profits, and then maybe sell off the amount, get and recoup your initial investment, or sell, take your profits out and let your initial investment continue to ride in it. Like you don't want to like sell your whole position in it, but you don't also want to let that 30% profit that you're making slip out of your hands and then go back down to a 5% profit, because that it can happen that quickly. So it's always nice to be able to set these like automated ups and downs. Same way on the bottom. You might be like, okay, I'm willing to lose. Like I'm willing to let this thing like fluctuate 15% maybe, or 10%. But when it drops below a certain threshold, I want out. Or I want at least my initial investment out, and then anything else that I can let ride, until it goes back up again. So those are all things that you can do too, that are like within that parameter of stock market stuff, which is great. So that's kind of getting back to your question. It really doesn't answer your question. So I just basically read what's available to me online and then dig deep. I really do spend a lot of time researching different companies before I um, put money into them, even if it's a little bit, because I hate gambling. I am not a gambler. Like I go to Vegas, I don't
Right.
gamble. I can't do it. I put $5 in a slot machine and I lose it, or $20. I'm like, okay, I'm done. It hurts. I hate that. I hate it. So,
Yeah.
um, that's kind of the way I do it. But getting back to what you were saying, yeah, online, I read about it online, try to find as much as I can, go to trusted sources. And then also my trading platform is great. TD Ameritrade is what I use, and they're great. They have tons of great information available to you. So,
One of the things that I like that I'm going to tap on this, and I think this is kind of a theme that we had for the whole the whole discussion today is knowledge is power. Go 80s. Knowledge
Yeah.
is power. You know,
Yeah.
I think that what there was a knowledge is power campaign. I don't know if it was like a GI Joe type thing popped up. Um,
I don't remember
I
that
don't
one,
know, man.
but I'm sure.
Yeah, there was the knowledge is power campaign. I can't remember which it was, but I remember watching that. Um, but the idea is like there's information to be had, and one of the great things that I think that our generation didn't grow up with is that there was this easy access. And I mean, like you said, though, you can become inundated, but there are phenomenal sources out there. If you want to learn more about finance, go read Forbes.
Yeah, it's so.
You know, get
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's so easy.
no,
It's
no,
like today I was actually looking to and put some more money into the market, and I've been kind of concentrating on these quantum computing ETFs and companies, and so I was looking at some. I have a couple AI companies, but I was looking into like AI ETFs. Right, all you have to do is go. I just went on there. I'm like top 5 AI ETFs for 2023, and there's 30 sites I can go to that have 30 different opinions about what the top 5 AI ETFs are for 2023. And what you do is you
that's
go
awesome.
and you look at each top 5 and you find the common denominator, and that's your guy. That's, like they'll have
Yeah,
this person has their top 5, this person has their top 5, this person has their top 5 of the top 5 that you're looking at. Which ones do they have in common? And that's kind of a consensus that the iShares robot AI ETF might be the one to put some money in, because you've got
yeah,
6 different people, like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend that you get this ETF. So,
yeah,
it's like that's good enough for me to put like, a couple grand into it and see what happens. So
yeah.
it's all right there. It's just right there. There's no reason to
That's
wonder
awesome.
anymore. It's sad because
No,
wonderment was such a cool thing when we were kids. Like, I wonder what that does, or I wonder how that works. And it's like, all the time I'm talking to people and we're having conversations like, I wonder what that means. And I'm like, let's find out. It's like right
right?
there. You don't really have to. It's fun to think about it, but you don't really have to think about it too long. It's all right there.
Yeah.
Just go get it.
This was something that my wife was looking at a contract for singing back in the States, and it was something that we didn't know about because she's been singing in Vietnam. And I looked at her and I said, it's a whole other world of contracts. So we need to find you an expert to review this contract. And sure enough, we had the contract reviewed and went on Fiverr, found a lawyer
There you go.
that reviewed contracts, and he looked it over, and I said, I'm worried about this language here. It seems a little bit predatory. Like they're taking advantage of people who don't necessarily know the system. And he's like, yeah, change it to this wording. We changed it up and we sent it back to the people, and we're like, we had our attorney look this over,
Yeah.
and they were like, okay,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, we accept these changes.
Yeah.
And it was boom, done. And it wasn't this crazy thing. It was just like we got information,
I know. I do.
and it was
It's like I
easy.
do my taxes every year on TurboTax, and I sign up for the expert. Where you can just like go into the chat thing and be like, "Hey, I got a question." And so I had a couple questions on like my car, like I can, write off my car, but I don't know how, and I didn't want to do it wrong, and I just went on there and I was like, I don't have to go to a CPA. I don't have to. I mean, most of it is pretty easy, and I get it. But when I get stuck, I just go on the chat thing that I've paid an additional $39.99 for, and I get a certified public accountant that's available, and we do it just like this. And he's like, he can like have, I have to allow him to like look into my computer, and he like looks at my forms and what I'm filling out, and he's like, oh, this is what you need to do this, do this. It's like, it's awesome. I'm like, awesome, dude, thank you so
Yeah,
much. He's like, actually, you could do it this way and you'll actually save a little bit more money and blah blah blah. And I'm like, great, excellent. And he's like, now that we've set this up like this, next year when you re-enter your TurboTax, it'll be all set up for you, and you can just
that's awesome.
plug in the same, plug in your numbers for next year, but in the same like framework that we've created. And I was like, this is awesome. you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think for people that are listening that feel overwhelmed, I think that, some people might starting out feel overwhelmed, feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you have debt. Maybe you are not even investing. Maybe you are slammed financially. And I think that the idea, though, is that if you start digging, information is out there
Hmm.
that you need to make a change in your
Hmm.
life. Whether it be that you need help with your taxes, whether it be that you need to get information about how to make more money.
Hmm.
Information's out there.
Hmm.
You just have to get a little creative and keep looking.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's like all sorts of ways to get there. And you'd be surprised if you were honest with yourself where you can start trimming back on things that
Right.
you do on a daily basis. Like, do I really need that? Do I really
This.
need this? That was one thing that was really interesting during the pandemic was is that, all of the things that I do to make money went away. So it really gave me a chance to kind of sit back and be like, okay, where can I trim the fat and save some money each
Yeah.
month until I can figure out where this thing is going and how long it's going to last. And a new, like, everybody had to kind of figure out, okay, this thing happened, everything stopped. Now, how do we move forward? And, it was amazing. It was amazing. Like I was like shocked. I'm like, man, why didn't I do this before? Like, because you don't really think about it. You're
Yeah.
working, you're doing your things, you're just going through life. I mean, I have two kids. It's enough that's just enough to try to stay on top of.
Right.
And it's like, so, but when you have the moment to stop and think about it, you can really, if you sit down and you look at what monthly your budget is and what you're spending your money on, there's going to be $300 a month there that you can reroute. And if you start taking $300 a month
Right.
and you put it in an Acorn account at the end of the year, you're going to have some money in there.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. And that's building for the future. It is planting the seeds.
yeah,
And because we're planting seeds every day,
yeah,
and you want to be planting seeds that are going to grow into something that's going to benefit you in the long run.
yeah, yeah. And it's that in turn is fun. So the fun that you might be
Yeah.
sacrificing in the
Right.
short term, at the end, you're going to be like, wow, this is actually really fun. This is really fun to like own my first house and start building some wealth and looking at my bank account and watching it get bigger. Like to me, those are things that are like
Yep.
rewarding. So more so than cars and clothes and things like that.